Hello and good morning. Today, our group, which is Group 2 of BBI 3427, will be presenting our topic, the flaws in our education. So, first, to know who we are, I am the leader of the co-group, which is Diana Nurina binti Muhammad Hafizul, and my matrix number is 213575. My next member is Nur Kristina Zahra binti Muhammad Radi, and her matrix number is 211546. And our last member, which is the cutest member, is Putri Ifa Sofia binti Abdul Razak, and her matrix number is 212032. So, next, our first flaw, the unnecessary courses in tertiary studies. So, the thing about tertiary studies is that we all know that being a university student is really hard. But the fact is, it doesn't, gives the excuse for making it harder for us. So, we have done surveys and interviews with students and alumni for their opinions on the subject. And most of them are overloaded with information for kids that are not necessary to learn since primary school, especially when it comes to national history, which has been taught since primary until secondary, and then they have to take it again, which is the same topics in SPM. This is decreasing the amount of STEM students. Most STEM students are clearly complaining about TITAS, which is called Tamadun Islam and Tamadun Asia Tenggara, which in English is just basically civilization of Southeast Asia, and it's not really necessary, especially in STEM education. Teachers expect students to know everything, so there's no basic teaching of language and terminologies, which is unfair to the students, of course. It's just irresponsible for them to not teach them at least the basic terminologies, and making them rely on Google full time is not really responsible for educators either. Our second flaw is psychological assessments for educators and students. So, why are psychological assessments non-existent, especially in Malaysia? I mean, it's mandatory in the United States and the United Kingdom. So why is it not here? Well, because in Malaysia, mental health is deemed taboo. So, what can be done? Educators must have a mandatory assessment, and this can make education accessible for students for a variety of mental illness, especially depression, trauma, borderline personality disorders, so many mental illnesses that are seen as just another sinful thing in many religions and in many of Malaysian culture. So what we should do, definitely for sure, is the first thing is disband school counselors and hire actual psychologists and therapists, because school counselors are just people who got their degree in psychology, not really psychology. It's just basic psychology, and they can be deemed as school counselors. Not only that, they actually don't have to sign anything to protect the privacy of students, which makes things even worse for the student, because we all know the common saying of, oh, don't go to the school counselor, because if you tell them, they'll tell the whole school, which is a sad thing, because that is true. They're going to tell the whole school about it. So we should hire actual psychologists and therapists which have signed oaths to keep the secret between the student, aka the patient, and the psychologist.
So now I'll be talking about the third flaw, which is in-class learning situations. So for this one, there's actually two main problems that we're discussing about, which is internet problems, and it causes absenteeism and communication problems. So basically, with internet problem, for example, you're in class intently listening on what the lecturer is speaking, and then suddenly he freezes. Yeah, and then even your friends. So basically, you pretty much guess that you have an internet connection problem. And because of this actually affects quite a lot of students, and this can actually cause quite the capability between these two groups of students, which some of them have good internet and can access and can hear the proper explanation by lecturers, while some don't. And most of the time they don't even understand what's happening in class. So yeah, that's a big flaw. The next one is COVID-19 online classes causes absenteeism and communication problems. So basically, absenteeism in this context is basically when we feel, like we are in class, but yet we feel quite absent in class. We don't really feel that we are in class because of how it's in online. And because of this, it can actually cause students to feel alone, feel like no connection with their friends, even though they are in class uh, most of the time throughout the week, because of how they don't even get to talk to each other outside of class, outside the online class, because we don't have time and the proper internet to be able to talk always with the others. So it's quite hard to have the connection, and it also is quite hard to hone our communication skills because of how we don't get to talk outside of class, and most time in class we have to listen to what the lecturer is giving. So yeah. Okay, now continue on to the fourth law, which is the educational management. So first I'll be talking about the uncertain valuation system. So because of how everything is online now, lecturers themselves don't really have the assurance of students not being able to stay off Google to do tests and like final exams and quizzes. Because of this, the lecturers they tend to add up assignments, and yet like even though they add up assignments, they aren't really able to give individual works a lot because of how like they have a lot of classes to deal with. So if for example like one class she has 20 students, so imagine if she has 3 class for her semester, so she has to go through 60 written assignments, like for every like 2-3 assignments that she gives her. So it's quite hard for like a lecturer to evaluate students nowadays. And the next one is no preparation for inclusive and disabled students who need special education. So I'm pretty sure you all would see, like now during the COVID times, because of how everything is online, we need to hear and actually see what is happening during class. And because of this can actually quite affect the students who have disabilities. They have either hard of hearing or blindness, and because of this can actually cause quite the hard studying process for them. Okay, so because of this flaw is very very important to improve because of how it can also improve crisis management skills for the school and for students and educators themselves.
What is actually the facilities of studies. So study shows that school facilities have an impact on overall school experience for both students and teachers. It also affects the health behavior and engagement of students. Thus, facilities make it easier for the school to deliver a better education. Lack of facilities actually limits the ability of a student to achieve various learning and extracurricular activities. It gives a negative impact on the teacher's job satisfaction, and it undermines their motivation. For example, students from STEM don't have the right equipment or even the proper place to carry out the experiment, and teachers also don't have the right equipment to actually teach them. They can't always go on based on theory. They have to do practical as well or hands-on in order to understand the experiment better. So it's quite a flaw there. The next one is also from school scholarship, whereby sports students actually need the right place or equipment to actually train and be better at their own sports, but they don't have all this because the school don't provide it for them, or even the government don't even provide it for them. Why do they have to carry out these projects where they don't even have the place to do it? So learning can be more interactive as well as more conducive with the will of school manager to keep on improving the innovations of school facilities, and teachers can actually be able to prepare students to adapt to the changing education requirement for their job market. Last but not least is actually the learning environment. So if you don't know, the environment actually affects 25% of the students' progress. Let's get to the first point, shall we? So the first point is actually students don't always get to focus in their homes as due to expectations and also culture. Especially these days when we are doing online, we are always at home. So parents are expected as students to balance out our homeworks and assignments with the house chores. If the students can balance it out together, they can do it. But if there are students who can't multitask and do two things at the same time, they are going to be burnt out. The next one is how the socioeconomic status affects education itself. So if your parents are actually from a higher education, for example, if your parents get to university, they emphasize more on your studies. Some parents don't even go to school, and they don't actually care whether or not students study or not, or even they graduate. This is actually quite bad. So if, as you can see, with a positive whole learning environment, you can have a better social interaction as well as attention, and also you are able to carry out your activities. So I would like to conclude that there were 6 flaws that we highlighted from our presentation, which are the unnecessary courses in tertiary studies, psychological assessment for educators and students, in-class learning situations, education management, facilities of studies, as well as environment of learning. So we hope that you understand how important it is for us to be aware of the flaws, for us to be able to correct it, as we will be the future teachers and administrators for our own education system. Make sure we make a change to the flaws we see today for a better tomorrow for our own children. Thank you.